"Mom, it's cancer." The words sliced through me like a razor-sharp blade, shattering the fragile illusion of normalcy that had cloaked our lives. My son's voice trembled, his eyes glistening with unshed tears as he clung to me, seeking refuge from the devastating news he had just delivered. Time seemed to halt in that sterile hospital room, the weight of the diagnosis crushing my lungs until I could scarcely breathe. The doctor's explanations faded into a blur, their clinical terminology failing to penetrate the numbing haze that enveloped me. My husband, Michael, sat motionless, his face contorted into a mask of disbelief. "That can't be right," he muttered, shaking his head vehemently. "There must be some mistake." The doctor's expression hardened, his patience already wearing thin. "I'm afraid the test results are conclusive, Mr. Walker. Your son has an aggressive form of leukemia, and we need to begin treatment immediately." Michael shot me a defiant glance, his jaw clenched. "This is ridiculous. My son is perfectly healthy. A little vitamins and rest, and he'll be fine." My mother-in-law, Evelyn, chimed in from the corner, her voice laced with disdain. "I told you this would happen if you let the boy eat all that junk food. Cancer is just a consequence of poor lifestyle choices." Rage bubbled within me, threatening to erupt. How could they be so callous, so dismissive of our son's suffering? I opened my mouth to unleash a torrent of fury, but my son's trembling form anchored me, reminding me that he needed me now more than ever. "Mom," he whispered, his eyes pleading with me to make sense of this nightmare. "What are we going to do?" In that moment, a steely resolve hardened within me. I would fight for my son's life, even if it meant battling the ignorance and cruelty of those closest to me. "We're going to listen to the doctors," I said, my voice steady and unwavering, "and we're going to beat this, no matter what it takes." Michael's face flushed crimson, his fists clenching at his sides. "Don't be ridiculous. We're not subjecting our son to those toxic treatments. They'll only make him sicker." The doctor interjected, his tone firm. "Mr. Walker, your son's condition is critical. Without immediate intervention, his chances of survival are extremely low." Evelyn scoffed, her disdain palpable. "Don't listen to them, dear. They're just trying to scare us into wasting money on their quack remedies." My grip tightened around my son's frail shoulders, shielding him from the onslaught of their ignorance. In that moment, I knew our lives had been irrevocably altered, and the battle lines were drawn. It would be a fight for my son's life, a war against the very people who should have been our allies. And I would not back down, not even for a second. The oncologist's words hung in the air like a suffocating shroud. "Chemotherapy is our best option to combat the cancer. We need to start the treatments as soon as possible." Michael's face twisted with rage. "Over my dead body," he spat. "I won't let you poison my son with those toxic chemicals." Evelyn nodded vigorously, her lips pursed in a disapproving scowl. "He's right. This is nothing that a strict regimen of herbal supplements and positive thinking can't fix." I recoiled in disbelief, my grip tightening around my son's shoulders. Was this really happening? Were they truly willing to gamble with his life based on their ignorant delusions? The doctor's expression hardened. "I understand your concerns, but I must insist. Chemotherapy offers your son the best chance of survival. Refusing treatment would be..." "Would be what?" Michael sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "An exercise of our rights as parents? You can take your poisonous chemicals and shove them." My son flinched, his eyes wide with terror. I had to intervene before this escalated further. "Michael, please," I pleaded, my voice strained. "Let's discuss this calmly. Our son's life is at stake." He whirled on me, his face contorted with fury. "Don't you dare take their side. These quacks just want to line their pockets by pumping our kid full of toxins." Evelyn cackled, her laughter like nails on a chalkboard. "That's right, dear. Don't let them bully you into their racket." I felt the tendrils of desperation tightening around my heart. How could I make them understand? How could I convince them to put our son's well-being above their delusional beliefs? The doctor cleared his throat, his expression grave. "I'm afraid I must insist. Refusing treatment would be tantamount to signing your son's death sentence." Michael's eyes narrowed to slits. "Is that a threat, doctor? Because if it is, you can take your little hospital and shove it." In one fluid motion, he snatched the orange juice from my son's trembling hands and hurled it across the room. The plastic cup exploded against the wall. splattering its contents in a vivid arc of pulp and citrus. "We're leaving," he snarled, grabbing my arm with bruising force. "And if you know what's good for you, you'll keep your damned mouth shut." Evelyn cackled again, her laughter a twisted mockery of the horror unfolding before us. I felt numb, paralyzed by the surreal nightmare that had consumed our lives. As Michael dragged me from the room, my son's terrified gaze seared into my soul, pleading with me to save him from this madness. And in that moment, I knew something inside me had shattered beyond repair. The breaking point had been reached, and there was no turning back. The memories came flooding back, unbidden and unwelcome. I was powerless to stop the deluge of emotions that threatened to drown me in their wake. It had been 10 years since David's battle with cancer. My first husband, the love of my life, had fought valiantly against the insidious disease. But in the end, it had stolen him from me, leaving a gaping void in my heart that I thought would never heal. I remembered those final days, huddled at his bedside, our fingers intertwined as we clung to each other with desperate need. The words we never spoke, the silent pleas for more time, echoed through the sterile hospital room. "Promise me." David's voice was little more than a ragged whisper, his once vibrant eyes dulled by pain and fatigue. "Promise me you'll find happiness again." Tears streamed down my face as I nodded, unable to give voice to the lie. How could I ever be happy without him? He was my world, my everything. And then, like a cruel cosmic joke, Michael had entered my life. With his charming smile and empty promises of a fresh start, he had seduced me into believing that the gaping wound in my heart could heal. I was a fool. The venom that had festered between us over the years erupted with spectacular vitriol as we stood in that hospital corridor, our son's life hanging in the balance. "You're no better than those quacks!" Michael's face was twisted into an ugly sneer, his eyes ablaze with contempt, always trying to undermine me, to make me look like a fool in front of my own family. Evelyn cackled from behind him, her cackling laughter like nails on a chalkboard. "That's right, dear. Don't let her browbeat you into sacrificing our principles." I recoiled, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "Principles?" I spat, my voice trembling with rage. "You call gambling with our son's life a matter of principle?" "It's not gambling," Michael roared, his face mere inches from mine. "It's refusing to be conned by a bunch of charlatans peddling poison. They're doctors, you ignorant fool." The words tore from my throat, raw and visceral. "Highly trained professionals trying to save our son's life." Evelyn's laughter died in her throat, her beady eyes narrowing to slits. "How dare you speak to my son that way, you ungrateful wretch?" I opened my mouth to hurl back a scathing retort, but the words died on my lips as a familiar face appeared at the end of the corridor. David's father, his eyes filled with sorrow and understanding. In that moment, the weight of my past and present collided, leaving me adrift in a maelstrom of grief and rage. I had lost David to this insidious disease, and now I was powerless to stop history from repeating itself. Unless a glimmer of resolve ignited deep within me, a tiny flickering flame that would soon become an inferno of determination. I would not lose another loved one to cancer. Not again. The stifling tension hung like a oppressive pall over our house, suffocating any semblance of normalcy or peace. The once warm home I had shared with David now felt like a battleground, every room a potential minefield of conflict. Michael stomped through the living room, his face contorted in a perpetual sneer. "Where's my dinner, woman? Or are you too busy playing nurse to that brat to remember your wifely duties?" I bit back the torrent of fury bubbling within me, focusing instead on the task at hand. Preparing the nutrient-rich smoothie the doctor had prescribed for our son's fragile condition. Evelyn cackled from her perch on the sofa, her bony fingers knitting yet another garish sweater. "Don't be so hard on the poor dear, Michael. She's got her hands full trying to undo all the damage those quacks have done." Our son shuffled into the kitchen, his eyes downcast and hollow. The once vibrant boy I knew had been reduced to a mere shadow of himself, his spirit crushed by the weight of his illness and the constant barrage of negativity. "Here, sweetie," I said, forcing a reassuring smile as I handed him the smoothie. "Drink this up, and you'll feel better in no time." He accepted the glass with trembling hands, his gaze flickering towards the living room where the jeers and insults continued unabated. What's that garbage you're feeding him? Michael sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. Evelyn clucked her tongue disapprovingly. Honestly, dear, you'd have better luck giving the boy a dose of rat poison. At least then he'd be put out of his misery. The glass slipped from our son's hands, shattering against the tile in an explosion of violet-hued liquid and shards of glass. His shoulders began to shake, his body racked with silent sobs as he fled from the room. Something inside me snapped. "How dare you?" I thundered, rounding on the two of them with a fury I had never known. "How dare you speak about my son that way? He's fighting for his life, and all you can do is mock and belittle him." Michael rose from his chair, his face twisted into an ugly mask of rage. "Don't you take that tone with me, woman. I'm the man of this house, and you'll show me some respect." "Respect?" I spat the word like a vile curse. "You've done nothing to earn my respect. All you've done is heap abuse and cruelty on us while we're suffering." Evelyn cackled again, her laughter like nails on a chalkboard. "Listen to her, Michael. The ungrateful harpy has the audacity to question your authority in your own home." Michael's fist lashed out, catching me square across the jaw with a sickening crack. I sprawled backwards, stunned by the force of the blow, my head spinning. "That'll teach you to mind your tongue," he snarled, towering over me like a menacing gargoyle. "Now clean up this mess and fix me a proper dinner. And if I hear one more word of disrespect from you—" His words trailed off, but the threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I could taste the coppery tang of blood in my mouth, a grim reminder of the toxic environment our home had become. In that moment, I knew something had to give. For the sake of my son and my own sanity, I couldn't endure this nightmare any longer. The breaking point was fast approaching, and when it arrived, there would be no turning back. The hospital waiting room felt like a suffocating tomb, the weight of fear and uncertainty pressing down on me like a vice. My son lay in the treatment room beyond those sterile double doors, his frail body subjected to yet another round of toxic chemicals in a desperate bid to save his life. I should have been by his side, holding his hand and offering what little comfort I could. But Michael had forbidden it, insisting that my presence would only upset our son further. "You've done enough damage already," he had snarled, his words laced with venom, filling his head with nonsense about listening to those butchers. Evelyn had nodded in smug agreement, her beady eyes glinting with malice. "That's right, dear. Best to leave the boy in our capable hands. Wouldn't want him influenced by your hysterical nonsense." So here I sat, exiled from my own son's bedside, reduced to a mere spectator in the battle for his life. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness, each second feeling like an eternity as I wrestled with the gnawing dread that threatened to consume me. The double doors swung open with a pneumatic hiss, and a nurse emerged, her expression grave. My heart leaped into my throat as I surged to my feet, desperate for news. "How is he? Is everything all right?" The nurse's gaze flicked towards Michael and Evelyn, who regarded me with undisguised contempt. "Perhaps we should speak in private," she murmured, her voice laced with trepidation. Michael bristled, his jaw clenched. "Anything you have to say can be said in front of us. We're his family, after all." The nurse's shoulders sagged, resignation etching lines of weariness onto her face. "Very well. Your son?" He took a turn for the worse during the treatment. The room seemed to spin around me as the blood drained from my face. "Worse? What do you mean, worse?" "His body went into shock," the nurse continued, her words feeling like a physical blow. "He slipped into a coma. The doctors are doing everything they can, but—" Her voice trailed off, the unspoken words hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. Evelyn clucked her tongue, her expression one of callous indifference. "Well, there you have it. All that poison you insisted on pumping into the poor boy, and look what happened." Michael rounded on me, his eyes blazing with fury. "This is your fault. If you had just listened to me and trusted in natural remedies, none of this would have happened." His fist lashed out, catching me square in the stomach and driving the air from my lungs. I doubled over, gasping for breath as stars danced before my eyes. "You're a disgrace," he spat, towering over me like a menacing gargoyle. "A failure as a wife and a mother. Our son is fighting for his life because of your ignorance and stubbornness." Evelyn's cackle cut through the air like a razor, her laughter a twisted mockery of the agony tearing me apart from the inside. In that moment, something within me shattered. The bonds of fear and obligation that had kept me tethered to this toxic nightmare were severed, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I could no longer endure this torment, not for myself, and certainly not for my son. As I struggled to my feet, my gaze settled on the vending machine in the corner, its glassy surface reflecting the battered, haunted image of a woman I scarcely recognized. But in that fractured reflection, I saw something else. A glimmer of defiance, a spark of determination that would soon ignite into an inferno of resolve. No more. I was done being a victim, done subjecting myself and my son to this cruelty and abuse. It was time to take a stand, to fight back against the forces that sought to destroy us. And God help anyone who stood in my way. The pristine beach stretched out before us, the gentle waves lapping at the shore like nature's own lullaby. But I found no solace in the tranquil scene, my mind a whirlwind of turmoil and determination. My son's condition had stabilized, the doctors cautiously optimistic about his prospects for recovery. But the ordeal had taken its toll, leaving me forever changed, hardened in a way I never thought possible. Michael and Evelyn had insisted on this tropical getaway, a supposed chance to reconnect as a family after the harrowing events of the past few weeks. But I knew better. This was their misguided attempt to sweep everything under the rug, to paper over the cracks in our fractured existence with sun and sand. Little did they know, I had other plans. "Isn't this just idyllic?" Evelyn crooned, her bony frame enveloped in a garish muumuu. A chance to escape all that dreadful hospital nonsense and just relax. Michael grunted in agreement, his eyes concealed behind a pair of gaudy sunglasses. "You heard the woman. Time to let go of all that stress and enjoy ourselves." His hand snaked around my waist, his grip possessive and suffocating. "Maybe we could even work on giving our son a little brother or sister, eh?" I recoiled from his touch, bile rising in my throat. How dare he act as though nothing had happened, as though he hadn't inflicted unimaginable suffering on our family? "Get your hands off me," I growled, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. Michael's brow furrowed, his sunglasses sliding down his nose to reveal a look of bemusement. "What's gotten into you? Can't a man embrace his wife in peace?" "You lost that right a long time ago," I spat, extracting myself from his grasp. "When you chose to abuse and neglect us instead of supporting us in our hour of need." Evelyn's cackle cut through the air, her laughter like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, listen to her prattle on, as if she's one to talk about neglect and abandonment." I whirled on her, my vision tinting crimson with rage. "You miserable crone. You enabled his cruelty every step of the way, egging him on with your twisted delusions." Michael's face contorted into an ugly sneer. "Watch your mouth. Woman, you'll show my mother some respect." His hand lashed out, but this time I was ready. I sidestepped his clumsy swing with ease, years of pent-up fury lending me strength and clarity. "I'm done," I growled, jamming my finger into his chest. "Done with your abuse, your ignorance, your complete disregard for our family." Evelyn's laughter died in her throat, her beady eyes narrowing to slits. "What are you babbling about, you ungrateful wretch?" A feral grin spread across my face as I dug into the pocket of my sundress, withdrawing the stack of papers I had been clutching like a talisman. "These are the papers finalizing the sale of our house," I announced, my voice ringing with finality. "The house I inherited from my late husband, the one you've been leeching off of for far too long." Michael's mouth worked soundlessly, his face flushing a mottled crimson. You did what?" "You heard me." I leveled my gaze at him, my eyes boring into his with undisguised contempt. "That house was my last connection to David, and I'll be damned if I let you defile it any longer with your toxicity." Evelyn's hands curled into gnarled claws, her shrill voice slicing through the air. "You ungrateful bitch! How dare you sell off our home behind our backs?" A harsh bark of laughter tore from my throat. "Your home? Don't make me laugh. It was never your home, and you were never my family." I turned on my heel, the papers clutched triumphantly in my hand as I strode away from their sputtering outrage, each step lighter than the last. "I'm leaving you," I called over my shoulder, not bothering to mask the satisfaction in my voice. I should have done it years ago, but I was too weak, too afraid. Michael's voice trailed after me, high and reedy with desperation. You can't do this. We're a family, goddammit! But his pleas fell on deaf ears. The chains of fear and obligation had been shattered, and I was finally free. As the distance lengthened between us, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, carried away on the gentle ocean breeze. It was a new beginning, a rebirth forged in the fires of hardship and pain, and I had never felt more alive. The silence that greeted us upon our return was deafening, a palpable weight pressing down on us from the moment we stepped through the threshold. Michael's face was frozen in a rictus of disbelief, his eyes darting around the barren rooms like a cornered animal. What is this?" he croaked, his voice little more than a strangled whisper. Evelyn's mouth hinged open, her expression a twisted mask of outrage. "Where are all our things? Our furniture, our belongings?" A harsh bark of laughter erupted from my throat as I brushed past them, relishing in their bewildered fury. "Gone," I announced, my voice ringing with finality. "Just like the two of you will be, once the moving van arrives." Michael whirled on me, his face flushing an ugly crimson. You did this? You sold everything behind our backs?" "Of course I did." I leveled my gaze at him, unflinching. "Did you really think I was going to let you continue defiling this place with your toxicity? This was my home, the one I shared with David before you slithered your way into our lives." Evelyn's shrill voice cut through the air like a banshee's wail. "How dare you? This is our house, our sanctuary. You have no right to sell it off like some common criminal." A feral grin spread across my face as I withdrew the sheaf of papers from my pocket, brandishing them like a victor's spoils. "These say otherwise," I countered, my voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "The house is mine, and I've every right to do with it as I please." Michael snatched the papers from my hand, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the legalese. This can't be. You forged these, you lying bitch." The meaty thud of his backhand caught me squarely across the cheek, whipping my head to the side with stunning force. I could taste the metallic tang of blood in my mouth, but the pain only fueled my resolve. "Go ahead and hit me," I growled, straightening to face him once more. "It won't change a damn thing. This house is sold, and you two parasites are getting thrown out on your worthless asses." Evelyn's eyes bulged, her face contorting into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "You ungrateful wretch. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" A harsh laugh tore from my throat. "Done for me? All you've ever done is heap abuse and misery on me and my son. Well, no more. I'm taking back control of my life, and there's not a damn thing either of you can do about it." The distant rumble of an engine heralded the arrival of the moving van, its hulking form lumbering into view through the front window. Michael's face drained of color, his Adam's apple bobbing convulsively as he fought for composure. You can't do this," he stammered, his voice thick with desperation. "We're a family, God damn it! Families don't just abandon each other like this." I fixed him with a withering stare, my lip curling in undisguised contempt. "A family? Is that what you call subjecting me and my son to years of emotional and physical torture? Enabling each other's cruelty and delusions while we suffered?" The burly movers spilled through the front door, their faces impassive masks as they took in the scene before them. Evelyn rounded on them, her voice a shrill banshee's wail. "Get out! Get out of our home, you louts! This is all just a misunderstanding, I tell you." But the movers paid her no heed, their calloused hands already hefting the few remaining pieces of furniture towards the waiting van. Michael's shoulders slumped, the fight visibly draining from him as the reality of the situation settled in. "Please." His voice was little more than a broken croak. "Don't do this. We can work through this as a family. Just give me another chance." For a fleeting moment, I almost wavered, the ghost of the man I had once loved flickering across his haggard features. But then I remembered the years of torment, the scars both physical and emotional that would never fully heal. "It's too late for second chances," I said, my voice soft but unyielding. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." As the last of our belongings disappeared through the door, swallowed by the gaping maw of the van, I turned to face them one final time. "Get out," I spat, relishing the words, "and don't ever come near me or my son again. We're through being your victims." Evelyn opened her mouth, no doubt to unleash another torrent of vitriol, but I had heard enough. Turning on my heel, I strode from the empty husk of the house, each step lighter than the last. It was over. The shackles of fear and obligation had been shattered, and I was finally free. As the moving van rumbled away, carrying the last vestiges of my former life, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. The warped cycle of abuse had been broken, and I had emerged the victor. The gentle breeze carried the faint scent of jasmine, a sweet reminder of the fresh start that lay before me. My son's hand was clasped in mine, his trembling fingers a tether to the life I had fought so hard to preserve. "Are you sure about this, Mom?" His voice was hushed, barely above a whisper. "What if they come back? What if—" I gave his hand a reassuring squeeze, offering him a warm smile. "They won't, not after what transpired. Your father and grandmother have faced the consequences of their actions and were finally free of their toxicity." A shadow flickered across his features, a fleeting ghost of the trauma we had endured, but then his shoulders straightened, his chin lifting with a newfound resolve that made my heart swell with pride. "Good," he declared, his voice gathering strength. "They deserved every bit of it after the way they treated us." I nodded, feeling a sense of vindication settle over me like a warm embrace. Michael and Evelyn had reaped what they had sown, their cruelty and ignorance finally catching up to them in a way they could no longer ignore. In the wake of our departure, Michael had lost his job, his employer unwilling to tolerate his erratic behavior and neglect of his family duties. Evelyn, too, had faced consequences, unceremoniously ousted from the opulent retirement community she had leeched off of for years. They had become pariahs, shunned by the very social circles they had once prized, their reputations in tatters. A fitting punishment, in my eyes, for the years of emotional and physical abuse they had heaped upon us. But dwelling on their downfall would only weigh me down, an anchor tethering me to the past I was so desperate to leave behind. No, it was time to focus on the future, to embrace the newfound freedom and possibility that stretched out before us. "Mom?" My son's voice snapped me from my reverie, his eyes shining with a mixture of trepidation and hope. Are we going to be okay? Just the two of us?" I felt a lump form in my throat, my heart swelling with a fierce surge of love and protectiveness. Dropping to one knee, I gathered him in a fierce embrace, stroking his hair as I fought back the tears that threatened to spill forth. "More than okay, sweetheart," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "We're going to be amazing, you and me, a team, taking on the world together." He clung to me, his slender frame trembling with a mixture of residual fear and burgeoning strength. In that moment, I knew we had survived the crucible, emerging from the flames of adversity, tempered and unbreakable. A soft cough from behind us broke the spell, and I turned to find David's father regarding us with a warm, paternal smile. "I know you two have been through hell," he said, his voice gentle yet tinged with an undercurrent of steel. "But you're not alone anymore. I'm here for as long as you need me." I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, one I hadn't even realized I had been carrying. David's father had been our sole ally throughout this nightmare, the one constant source of support and understanding. Perhaps in time he could become the family we had always longed for, but could never quite grasp. Rising to my feet, I extended my hand towards him, a silent invitation into the new life that lay ahead. "Thank you," I said simply, the two small words carrying a universe of gratitude and promise. As his calloused hand enveloped mine, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a balm soothing the raw wounds of the past. It was a new beginning, a fresh start forged in the fires of hardship and pain. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I allowed myself to feel hope.